feel you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Roster Reveal Show. SFL Nation Roster Reveal Show means that the preseason and Season 11 is just around the corner. I am Commissioner Cameron Irvine, and tonight our panel will break down the West, East, South, and everything in between, and all the very unique player builds, more unique than ever before with the addition of the copper level. And we've also got the preseason schedule release coming up at the end of the show tonight. Preseason kicking off Sunday, July 1st. That's next weekend, people. Few analysts on our panel tonight. And we start by saying hello to the owner of the Dallas Lobos, Stephen Molinex. How you doing, Stephen?
Hey, Cam. I felt like you were just about to say Roughnecks there. But yeah, you avoided it. That is great. No. I'm getting used to it, too. And it's a pleasure to be here with you.
That's why the Baltimore Vultures aren't on the show. Because I would probably screw it up. Also with us, it's the host of the SFL podcast, linebacker for the Mexico City Aztecs, Jack Brown.
Hey, everybody. How well doing tonight?
I think we're doing pretty well. And filling in for Tanner Hendrix, who had a work emergency. Hendrix took a lot of excellent notes, though, to catch Mr. Bond up to speed, but I have a feeling that he doesn't need it. John Bond with us, owner of the Las Vegas Fury. How you doing?
I'm glad to be here again. Always ready to get my feet wet and provide some insight of what I think would help everybody know what's going on with teams and what's going on in the league.
I love it. Hashtag We Are All Crabs from Eric Dahlquist. In the chat, shout out Mark, Danielle Lopez, Hunter Jones, Eric Davis, Ryan Michaels, Kanye Rockefeller, Carrion Miller, Mighty RX, Jay Ringgold, Ryan Michaels, CAG NFL. Lots of good stuff going on in the chat right now as everybody files in for tonight's show, 48 and counting. And we start, or hope to start, with there's one more person on our panel. The Director of Player Personnel, Andrew Rastelli. Andrew, you there with us?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right.
How
hey,
you doing,
everybody.
Andrew?
I snuck in here. I didn't even know I was here.
You did sneak up here. And we start tonight's show with what's trending, because we saw a lot of action throughout this offseason. And what did you see, Andrew, across the league that was most interesting?
Well, as far as league-wide trends, we'll start with the market-adjusted value positions. So all cornerbacks were reduced by 2 points overall, and it definitely saw an increase that teams saw value there. So we went from having 31 cornerbacks signed at the end of season 10, increased to 36 at the start of season 11. And to be honest, Dallas actually added 2 CBs during the season in season 10, so that gap between the 2 seasons is actually larger. And then wide receivers, they received a +2 overall value bump because of the market, but we still saw an increase. We had 44 wide receivers signed at the end of season 10. We had 52 going into season 11, including, again, Dallas's 4 widespread. So the market adjustment, it seemed to increase the signings. Whether or not they were decreased or increased is probably the value of those positions, but I found that an interesting thing to look at. This season will have the most kickers signed than any other SFL season, with 8. 5 of those kickers are signed at copper value, whether it be base or slightly above. So even though teams are not necessarily fully committed, they are still looking for that boost in just getting those 3 points when you're making that playoff push. When you're late in the season, sometimes those 3 points matter, and having someone you can depend on more than a non-contract kicker can mean the world. And you'll see that from some owners who always have that spot on a roster saved. The new attribute minimums that the new copper level gave us, we saw, particularly in the defensive backs with the corners and the safeties, a large amount of players reduced specifically their pass rush and run coverage stats to the new copper minimum. When dropped from last season's bronze minimums, each cornerback saved about 0.62 of cap. And for the safeties, since those attributes are primary, we saw over 3 points saved in cap space just by dropping those 2 attributes. So we see teams that they see those 2 attributes and they don't necessarily have a whole lot of value tied to them. And then on the other side, you have consistency, a lot more popular going into the start of this season. Compared to last season, teams and players tended to preserve their consistency rating as free agents, signing new contracts, or in the case of rookies, starting the season with a higher rating here. Quarterbacks, still a position where teams do not want to save cap space. Only one team braving the bronze quarterback, but it's Matt Wilson, the bronze bomber. So I don't think we're going to see much problem there. A build that really sticks out to me, and it segues to my next section, is London. London is basically taking the successful aspects of both teams that were in the championship game. You have their offense, which sports a gold QB, a gold and copper wide receiver, and a gold tight end, and no star running back. And then on defense, you have a full 4-man defensive line with a gold defensive tackle, 2 bronze defensive ends, and a copper defensive tackle bringing up the rear. So you have the Tallahassee defensive line and the Alaska offense combined under one team. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It also allowed London essentially to give max contracts to all of their players. They signed everybody to what they were valued at. At the end of season 10, speaking of defensive line, there were 18 defensive lines signed to the teams. A couple were added over the course of the season. But at the start of season 11, there were 31. It's a very cheap position due to the market value at the end of last season, but the demand has obviously gone up. However, a third of the defensive ends are signed at copper level. So you see, just like with the kicker, they're willing to take the roster spot, but they're not willing to spend the money yet. But we'll see where that goes. Number of free safeties have gone up from 20 to 25 from the end of last season to the beginning of this season. And one interesting thing there is that Queen City is usually, we know them for having that 2 free safety build. Well, last season Indianapolis joined them, and this season Mexico City is sporting 2 free safeties. As far as strong safeties, Alaska is going to be the only team that has not signed a strong safety. So, but the numbers of linebackers and strong safeties are just about the same from the end of last season going into this season. And that's kind of where the league trends have shown us.
Well, that's a lot to take in, but a lot that we've been tracking all off-season long. Rastelli, I think you have about 50 other things to go do, so why don't you...
Yeah, I got a Home Alone house going on tonight. We leave for a trip for a wedding tomorrow, so I got all the family here.
Andrew, thanks for joining us on What's Trending.
Thank you.
All right, now we're looking at the top storylines of each conference. We start in the South, and we start with Jack Brown. Take it away, Jack.
Well, the South is a very interesting conference, as all are. Of course, one of the main things that I looked at, the South is the only conference of the three to have absolutely no star kickers on them. Everyone whose star kicker is off in the other two conferences, so do not expect a lot of grandiose special team play. And of course, also, you're going to be expecting yourself to see a lot of defense. You're going to have just 4 of the 20 gold offensive players, and the highest paid being Tallahassee's Jay Eniola, who we'll talk about later. He's a very interesting player to look at. You can look at just the anatomy of Tallahassee Pride. And of course, the Pharaohs are going to be paying a premium, as well as Tallahassee Pride's defensive line. Overall, I think that more bolsters my old point of the fact that there is a lot of defense going on down south. Pharaohs got 2 of the top 3 highest paid defensemen in the entire league. And of course, the Tallahassee Pride have 4 silver signed defensive linemen. I'll get into that, of course, later on into the show.
All right, thanks, Jack. Now for a look at the East top headlines, we go to Stephen Millenex. Stephen.
Yeah, this is an interesting conference here, the Eastern Conference. Offensively, the East features the 2 top rushing attacks from last season, and the East also bolsters 3 gold running backs that will start on week 1 here in season 11. That's the most of any of the SFL conferences. So they're going to pound the rock. And there are currently, when it comes to quarterbacks under center, there are currently a total of 7 gold star quarterbacks heading into season 11. 4 of them reside in the East. So this means we could see the biggest offensive explosion from the Eastern Conference, at least early on into the season. Now, including the performance of the Baltimore quote-unquote Crabs back in season 9, the combined standings for the Eastern Conference teams, the last time each one of them played, is a lowly 32-52. That's a winning percentage of 38%, and that's significantly lower than the other 2 conferences. In fact, there was only one team in the East that posted a record better than 500 last season. What that means is that we expect to see some of the teams, especially the top-tier teams, jump in the standings early and may lead throughout the entire season. But it also means that for some of these historically underperforming teams, we could absolutely see a shocker or 2 come out of those teams this year. 4 of the 6 SFL teams who posted the worst scoring offenses in the league also reside in the East. The East possesses 5 teams who rank among the worst defenses, top 9 in points allowed during season 10. So these are teams that struggled offensively last season, but also had difficulty stopping anyone from scoring. But they're facing each other now. And so it's kind of a wild card, especially with these new updated team builds, which we'll get into. Finally, the Eastern Conference possesses two teams who feature 4 different star defensive linemen each. This means the East should be a beast when it comes to rushing the passer and racking up those sack totals. Now, those same 2 franchises will be fielding non-contract starting cornerbacks, at least to start the season. So they're no doubt hoping that their pass rush makes up for their lack of secondary talent. We'll see how it works out.
Thanks, Stephen. Now a look at the Western Conference. We send it over to John Bond.
Yeah, when you first look at the Western Conference, I just want to point out that you have to realize how many playoff and championship teams are there. But also from the headlines, you have to look at the fact that Alaska and San Francisco have gold quarterbacks. That's something they've got all those animations to take into account. And that Denver and Mexico City are the only teams with gold defensive backs. So it's interesting to see how those offenses and defenses will stack up against each other. The Las Vegas Fury is the only team with a gold running back, and so that's a big payoff. Was he worth the price? And are they just going to be running the ball and pounding that rock? And how's that going to look for them? I think they'll have a good running success, and I think a lot of people are waiting to see how that's going to turn out as well. Also, you have 11 of the 12 Sparrows are silver or bronze, which means that there might be one of those teams that maybe starts off slow, but then mid-season, like a lot of teams like Mexico City or Queen City, I think that's one of those veteran playoff teams that just can, at the end of the day, they're going to be firing on all pistons. I think that's what they're saying, and you're going to see them make another playoff run with a balanced attack.
Thanks, John. Well, first up on our team previews list tonight, we go to the defending champs, and how could we not, the Alaska Storm, and what the Alaska Storm are going to be doing this year. We start with John Bond and his breakdown of Alaska in the West.
If you look at Alaska, they brought back, I think, Ron Cochran, who was one of the most accurate passers from last season, and he has a ring. They've still got their wide receivers, some of the top wide receivers in the SFL still, along with Tallahassee. You've got 2 guys that know how to catch the ball. Well, you got 3 guys that actually know how to catch the ball, and Ron Cochran's willing to use all 3 of those options. What's interesting is that they did very well with a non-contract running back, and now Stanley Nordellis has a fullback to help him back there, either blocking, or we're going to see what Mighty is going to use that fullback with. What else is Alaska have? The Alaska also has they got their kicker back, yeah, and that was a guy that was talking about retiring or not sticking around, and then he realized that how much he meant to that team, so they've got him back and at a good level with some progression. And the only thing that they'll really hold off the defense that you can see when you got the Mighty, the defense guru, is that they don't have that strong safety. And from what I've always heard is that it's kind of crazy for some of these veteran coaches and owners not to run the free safety, strong safety package. So I'd like to see how that turns out for them, and if they're able to stop and be as a defensive force as they were last season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially with the acquisition of DJ Majesty. He's the only one of the 5 gold or silver players that was acquired in free agency. He came over from Houston, and you know, like the Western Conference needs more defensive firepower, because there's a lot of talented players. AJ Levy, Pablo Zamora, all sorts of stuff, particularly in the secondary, and then of course you got Big Sexy as well. DJ Majesty was that big piece, but John, as a coach in the Western Conference, what's the wrinkle with Alaska? What's going to be the most difficult thing when you play them to have to handle?
I think the fact that they still have Big Sexy. I think he knows how to always find the quarterback or stop that run, and now he's plugging up the middle. He's going to give Fats Johnson a run for his money as a Western defensive threat. I think that's the guy that's going to make the difference, as he's done every season that he's been in the SFL.
All right, thanks for the report on Alaska. Now we go south to the champion runners-up, the Tallahassee Pride, and Jack Brown has that report. Take it away, Jack.
Now, Tallahassee, I'll tell you this, Cam, they are looking very interesting because, well, for one, their only gold signing was running back Jay Eniola. Now, of course, last season, Tallahassee was very well known for their passing game. They got over 400 yards game on passing, if memory serves correct, while getting only about 85 yards rushing per game total. And of course, you know, Tallahassee and Jay Eniola. Jay Eniola finished 14th out of the 20 active running backs in the season last year. He only got 841 yards on 192 carries. So it is very interesting to see that Tallahassee is now really trying to bolster their running game in the South. And, of course, through that, their passing game is going to have to take some pay cuts. Christian Christensen, former league MVP, is now was signed at the 6th lowest value of any quarterback in the SFL as a whole. And, of course, their passing, people who are going to be out there catching the ball. Let's see, we have Ken Gossett, who is valued at 9th highest overall with 89.93, and Duke Wilson was number 15 at 86.5. So that's kind of interesting to see how, at least at the beginning of the season, Tallahassee's going to look more run the rock. Meanwhile, one of the most potent things about Tallahassee last season that led them to that almost undefeated season was their D-line. It was an infamous pain to deal with throughout the entire season. Of course, a lot of teams just couldn't handle it, and they fell very quickly. For instance, we have Hunter Norwood, who had the most tackles for a D tackle and second overall in the D-line behind Chester Field, who plays for the Sharks, but he's now, of course, an Indy Red Devil. And now, naturally, of course, he has the 5th best initial contract for a D tackle, and the overall best not at a gold level. Their overall run to the litter on the D-line is E.J. DeQ, who's drafted 19th overall. He was the 5th lowest D tackle signed at 69.95. He, of course, is replacing Fats Johnson, who I was surprised did not come back. And, well, on the D ends, you have Taquan Hale and Kevin Bain occupy the 4th and 5th spots, respectively, on the chart for DN. Once again, they look to cause a whole lot of damage to the league. I would not be surprised to see Tallahassee's D-line become another force to be reckoned with.
I think an interesting thing about the Pride, Jack, is the fact I think that activity and player progression is going to play a key role in this team, particularly in the secondary, because now this was one of the most active teams in the league last year, so as long as they can keep that up, they should be okay. But they've got 3 out of their 4 players in the secondary are bronze or copper. If for whatever reason they have some trouble getting those players to improve and get better, Tallahassee's secondary could be a real problem for them down the stretch. How do you see that playing out, Jack?
Well, you know, they are in the South, and yeah, sure, you have some decent quarterbacks thrown in there, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem. However, of course, as you said, you got progression coming in, so at that point, towards the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if Tallahassee gets burned a lot on those big sort of plays.
All right, well, that's a look at the Tallahassee Pride, the runners-up from the South. Interesting team build there with, I believe that's 8 silvers. 8 is the most at any level on any team, and a few teams have 8 at particular levels. There is not a single team that has an identical build in the SFL, so it's pretty interesting there. Well, let's take a look at some of the most unique builds, and let's start out across the pond with the London Knights and Stephen Mullinex. Take it away, Stephen.
Yeah, this is an interesting London Knights team. We've already talked about how just intriguing their team build is. This is a team that went 3-9 last season, 13th scoring offense, 15th scoring defense. You know, and as much clout and publicity that their defense got, they actually were the worst against the run last season. They allowed 145 rushing yards a game last season, and that's actually 26 more yards on the ground per game to the next closest SFL defense. So they were getting run on. So is it any wonder why they invested in 4 defensive linemen and a gold inside linebacker to help stop that bleeding? Yeah, this is a team that added a tight end and a defensive tackle and lost an offensive lineman, an offensive linebacker, outside linebacker, and a cornerback from last year's roster. So they're running with the full D line of stars and no star corners on the field. They've got a bronze strong safety, a copper free safety, but they're putting all their money on that defensive line, affecting the passing offense to the point where they can get away with non-stars at cornerbacks. And we've seen it be successful in this league, whether it be Queen City, who's famously done that in the past, or Tallahassee. We've seen teams have great success doing that, but can London do that? That's the big question. So for me, their biggest concern is their secondary and their reliance on that D-line. Andrew talked about this team building off the success of Alaska and Tallahassee. I actually got a chance to talk to Liam, and he told me that, yes, their defense was certainly inspired by Tallahassee's defensive line, those stars, and Alaska, actually. He says he studied Mighty a lot, but as far as his offense is concerned, which he actually calls Air Crowder, He wants to focus solely on the passing game. He wants to bomb it, and they want to air it out. And that's the reason why they have no star running back. They just were tired of trying to split their focus on trying to find some kind of a balance, and have just decided to just curb things one way entirely.
You know, London had probably the most successful free agency in terms of the talent they were able to get. They got Nathan Lee from Indianapolis, gave him a max deal. They got James Hands from Dallas, gave him a max deal. They got Tristan Carr from Vancouver, they gave him a max deal. And then they brought Axmal and Shady, two of their most active people, back at gold. Steven, the ups and downs of the SFL, you know, London started so hot last year, 3-1, and then they fell off, losing 8 in a row. What is their window like to keep these free agents happy? Because if they have another season like they had, they may not be able to have as much success in free agency as they did this year. Is there what's the pressure level for London to win now with all of those acquisitions?
As a team who went through a losing season last season, I don't think it's about the win-loss column as much as it's about the culture. The culture in the locker room really helps determine the positivity and helps your players to get up for games that are coming up, you know, regardless of what the standings are or where you are in the playoff race. Yes, absolutely, you want to have a competitive team, but we've have winning teams here in the SFL who don't necessarily have the best locker rooms. But Dallas got voted as one of the top communities from last season with a 2-10 record. And we did that because we had quality users, obviously, but we also built a really great culture in the locker room.
All right, well, that's the London Knights. 5 golds, 1 silver, 3 bronze, and 3 copper is their makeup. And from Steven's analysis to Steven's team, Jack has the preview of the Dallas Lobos. Take it away, Jack.
Now, the Lobos here, as we all know, did not have the best season to them, to their credit, last year. Of course, they went 2-10, worst record in the SFL. So now, you know what they decided to do, Cam? They decided to take it way back. The last time they made it to the championship, when they had 4 wide receivers. Now, of course, here's the thing we have to look at. Two of those 4s are Copper. You have former QB Mason Kirby and Crash Combs, if I'm not mistaken, general manager. And they are 2 of the 3 lowest paid wide receivers in the entire league. So, definitely looking for growth there. And I think they're trying to just cram in as many. Granted, you know, I can't read Steve's mind, although he is in the call right next to me, breathing down my neck. Sorry. The other copper that they have on offense is Royce Robin, the only copper halfback in the entire league, and is by far the lowest paid. He is 14.93 points less in terms of value than the next lowest signing, who is surprisingly Ray Bentley, and you know we'll get to that later. Obviously, not in my own analysis. And, well, if you're looking at how they back it up there on the defense side of things, they're looking very secondary focused, being the only team with no contract D linemen in the South. And they also have a gold CB in Dante West, and the highest paid strong safety in the entire SFL with Payne Vasquez. We were discussing how you pronounce that name earlier before the show. If Payne is out there, please tell us how you pronounce his name. And, of course, they have a silver free safety and bronze cornerback, clearly going for a more pass defense, which, I mean, I don't necessarily blame them. You know, you are in the South, and you're going to want to develop the pass game very well. Maybe this will be something that will cause Tallahassee some pain going forward at the end of the season.
You know, Dallas is basically taking the best of what they currently had and the best of what they had a year ago before their team was riddled with just unfortunate transactions during the season. But essentially, you know, Crash Combs and Ray West, the 2 general managers, are here, as you mentioned. Mike Osai continues to be on the team. And then, you know, they pulled E.K. Vincent from Atlanta. And they pulled Kane Vasquez from London, but they also went back to the 4 wide receiver set. They also bring back Shabazz Synergy at quarterback, who came in relief due to an injury to their starter last year in the final game of the season. Dallas is trying to mesh the best of what happened in Season 9 or in Season 8 with the best of what is going on currently on their team. Can they pull this back here and get back into the playoffs, Jack?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to make any guarantees here for Dallas, but obviously since they're going back to what worked for them overall, especially that 4 wide receiver core, that can really do some damage in the South. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if they ended up in the playoffs. Never mind if they ended up in the playoffs as one of the top 2 teams in the South.
All right, well, that's a look at the Dallas Lobos. Thank you, Jack. Now, out west, John Bond has a look at the Sioux Falls Sparrows. Take it away, kapow.
When you first look at the Sioux Falls Sparrows, I think you think about stopping the run, and they still have 2 linebackers that are at least silver. And they're the only team with silver linebackers at current rate coming into the beginning of the season. They've also got no silvers or golds in the secondary or at wide receiver, but I think you'll see that they've still got their long-standing quarterback. They've got a good running back. They've got a typical offense, nothing too surprising to me. A lot of 3 wide receivers and that extra tight end for that safety to throw in the option there that you never know that he can be that threat. But I think you'll see that secondary tighten up as the season progresses, because they may all look bronze, but I think once they give a few weeks under the belt, you're going to see some ball hawk and maybe some closing speed out there. That's really going to shore up that dangerous defensive, that whole defense for Sioux Falls. And they know, the coach knows how to use the playbook and get them to the playoffs. So I think overall, while they don't show a lot of go talent at the beginning, they have someone that week in and week out can get them where they need to be before the season's to get them in the playoffs at the end of the season.
Yeah, John, it's interesting. It's kind of amazing how both teams, both London and Sioux Falls, can reach 890, but London has 5 golds and Sioux Falls has 0. They're very different teams, and Sioux Falls is certainly in the minority, not having a single gold player, and certainly in the minority not having it at wide receiver or somewhere in the defensive secondary, or on the defensive front for that matter. Sioux Falls, very unique team. They go back to tight end with Mr. Irrelevant Craig Hearn that was picked 42nd in the draft. And how does a team compete with no golds? Obviously progression is going to be big for them, because they potentially could have a crap ton of golds there towards the end of the season if that locker room stays active and Sioux Falls has a season on the field like they did last year.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a team that maybe has a slow start, like a lot of teams did last year, like that know how to make the playoffs, like Mexico City and Queen City. Maybe that they're trying to fight and keep that get that above average score and make that playoff run. So you're going to see that same thing, I think, where maybe the first couple of games are going to be rough, but they've got a solid locker room from what I hear, and they know how to just stick with it and trust the process maybe. And by the season end, they don't have to wait a couple seasons to build. They'll get their half point and they'll be firing. So that's what I see from them.
Let's keep it with John, and let's keep it out west. Let's even go further out west to Vancouver, the Vancouver Legion. And how do you see their season shaping up, John?
With one of only 2 teams with 5 offensive stars, at least silver, that other team being Atlanta. They're the only team this year to have a star running back and fullback. So speaking of copying things that work from Alaska and Tallahassee, I think Andy looked at Tallahassee and saw that they could really utilize a running back and a fullback in that for that offensive package. They still bring a deadly only team with two star cornerbacks at least silver. So you've got Major Key, I believe, and I don't off the top of my head, I'm not sure who the other guy that's coming back. Trey Lawson. Yeah, I mean right there you've got. Now some teams didn't utilize cornerbacks, but I think it's a bad mistake. I think that you're going to see a secondary that knows how to play defense.
Well, Vancouver is an interesting case because Major Key, of course, he made himself famous with that 2-interception game against San Francisco, particularly one of the best plays of the year, where he returned it all the way back for a touchdown through traffic. He basically gets the keys to a defense that really kind of struggled last year, and they now have 3 silver or golds in the secondary, 4 players overall. And so the defense got the talent. The offense sort of has the storylines. Mark Biddix comes from Carolina. Cody Hill basically fell to Vancouver. I don't think they expected to get a guy with that type of skill and activity there that late in the draft. Avon Sanchez has been a staple now in Vancouver. He moves over to fullback. So you've got the talent on the defense, mostly, that is returning, and then you've got the storylines on offense. What is Vancouver's identity, do you see, John? Because last year it was they took a lot of sacks, they had a lot of big play abilities, and they just, some days were great and some days weren't.
I think you're going to see them rely on their rookie running back. I think Cody Hill is going to be the talk about when you think about Vancouver, is how you're going to stop a guy that watched a lot of film, and he came in the season knowing how to run the ball, and I think you're going to see them make a lot of progress in that run game, and that keeps the quarterback from getting sacked if you're having to worry about handing the ball off to such a star talent.
All right, that's a look at Vancouver. Now all the way back across the great United States, we visit Raleigh. Carolina Skyhawks. Take it away, Stephen.
Yeah, the Carolina Skyhawks are all about knowing who they are and forging an identity this year. They had a 3-9 season last year. They fielded the worst scoring / passing offense in the SFL, averaging only 18 points per game and 183 yards through the air. So, passing, scoring, not necessarily what they wanted to do last season, because they were the top rushing attack, nearly 150 yards on the ground per contest. So they wanted to run the ball. They wanted to keep the score low. Unfortunately, they had the 13th scoring defense in the league, so they weren't able to stop opposing offenses as much as they wanted to. So what did they do? They have tripled down on defensive linemen. They have removed a wide receiver and 2 cornerbacks as stars from their roster last season and given those contracts to 3 defensive linemen. So they are going to have one of only 3 in the league this season. They've got a full regiment of star defensive ends and star defensive tackles. And they are also going with no star cornerbacks. So they are relying on that front line to put pressure on the passing attack and get those turnovers and really be the heart and soul of their defense. Now, they are one of only 2 SFL teams who actually will field 5 Gold Star players starting week 1, and that includes a gold quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. So we could see an early boost from this team offensively just because they're already gold rated so high at those key skill positions.
I think what Carolina did was smart from this standpoint. When you're not good at something in particular, a particular skill, and for Carolina, the last couple of years, offense has just been a bugaboo. And I think what Carolina is saying by signing these 3 offensive skill players to big contracts and then throw in Jalen Miller as well as the 4th in silver is, hey, we may not be the best, we may not have the best offensive minds, we're certainly getting better and improving, but while we figure it out, we're going to make sure that we have the talent to maybe make up for some of those deficiencies, and we expect to score more points than we did. The caveat, the flip side to that, is if you don't score points and your offense still isn't effective, that's a lot of points down the drain that you could really have used somewhere else. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts on the whole argument of invest in what may be a deficiency rather than invest in what you're really good at?
Yeah, it makes sense on the outside of things. For me, it's just about how do you scheme? How do you scheme for having those lower end cornerbacks? What do you do? Are you just abandoning man altogether? What kind of formations are you running? Are you putting everybody out in zone? Are you giving them extra help in the secondary and to adjust? They do have a gold free safety out there. That's certainly going to help over the top, especially against those number one wide receivers. They've got a bronze strong safety, should help as well. But that's my biggest concern there is, I think, Cam, by doing so, by going kind of all in to address a weakness, you create other weaknesses. And can you make up for that in one, player progression, and two, playbook?
We'll find out. Carolina definitely has a strong front office and a strong locker room. A.J. Francis and Sir Chappelle, a big part of that there at the gold level. Now it's time to take a look at some of the new leadership around the league, and we start with John Bond taking a look at the Denver Nightwings, who bought and moved San Antonio in the offseason.
Yeah, if you look at what Jeremy's done, they've lost their punter and their kicker when they moved to Denver, but they've got a good quarterback, running back, and 3 wide receivers. So it looks like a solid build on that end. Then if you notice, they kept pretty much 2 cornerbacks, 2 safeties, and then they went with a linebacker, a defensive end, and a defensive tackle. So to me, it looks like they don't host many golds themselves, but they have golds in 2 key positions at safety and cornerback to help stop that air threat. And then if you look, they've got enough room to build, so they can kind of figure out where they're going to mold and what they're going to go as the season progresses.
Giacomo Jones, huge pickup from London, and they were also able to retain Bailey Baca, B.J. Armstrong, Nicholas Warner off the San Antonio team, and B.J. Armstrong in particular shined really bright as a rookie for San Antonio. You know, Max, you went from San Francisco to Las Vegas. The culture change, the locker room change, right? In San Antonio, their season sort of bottomed out. They just kind of fell apart down the stretch, lost a bunch of games. The front office of that organization just they were on their way out and had other obligations, and San Antonio's season just kind of got away from them. How do you see those guys who stuck around, who gave Jeremy an opportunity? Is that gonna make Denver maybe a stronger team than we think, because Jeremy was able to retain so many of those guys from the Vaqueros?
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think you're looking at some guys that maybe are looking at other options, and then once they sat down and talked to Jeremy and saw what he was thinking and how he was going to lead the team, they stuck around. And so that's what you're going to have. You're going to have that good locker room that maybe even if they lose a couple games in the first of the season, I think that they're going to stick around because they know that they can still, every game they have a chance, because they've got a guy that knows how to play offense because he ran the offense for Vancouver last season. And then I think they got the defense down too. So you're going to see a team that can compete each week with any team in the league.
Thank you, John, for the report. Now out to Baltimore, where the Crabs used to be there, but this is a brand new team despite having the same owner. Baltimore Vultures roster reveal. Take it away, Steven.
Yeah, this is the only team that was going to feature a gold wide receiver and a gold cornerback in the SFL to start week 1. And it's one of only 6 SFL teams that are not jumping on the D-line bandwagon. They do not have any stars along their defensive line. Instead, they've invested those stars in 2 linebackers, 2 cornerbacks, 2 safeties on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, you've got a quarterback, a running back, and 3 wide receivers and a kicker. Now, this is the glorious return of one of the greatest owners in SFL history, Tim Johnston, TJ. His return to the league after a hiatus in season 10. Let's not forget, this is a Baltimore team that through season 3 through season 7, Baltimore made the playoffs every single season. Now, they failed to do so in season 8 and season 9. So I think my biggest question, Cam, is which Baltimore team are we going to see? Are we going to see the franchise that dominated this league early, going to the playoffs every single season? or are they going to continue to struggle like they showed in their last two performances?
Well, the one thing that you remember about the Baltimore Crab teams of old is the fact that they could do a lot of things, right? They were they were well versed on offense, right? They had a good running game with Elliott Snyder. They had a good passing game. A lot of legends to stroll through there. Nick T. Quick, Elijah Bishop, all of that. And in the last two seasons they were in the league, if you could stop Baltimore's vertical passing game deep down the sidelines, you pretty much had them. You pretty much had them. And Baltimore sort of lost that. You know, they were part of the Swing City era, and they were a part of the deep ball era, and it just wasn't working out in 8 and 9. And now they got Garen Malone, former Houston Hyena. They got Shea Carroll, former Dallas Roughneck, and they got Daley Halder, who used to be on Baltimore, but also had a very successful season in the vertical passing game in San Antonio. So what do you think? Plus, I can't forget, too, Tony Willis, the Alaska Storm safety, who basically was the biggest reason why Alaska was able to win the championship. But, Stephen, what Baltimore, do you think that we're going to see more of that vertical passing game, or is Troy Gaines, this rookie running back, is he going to be the difference maker in why this team makes it to the playoffs?
Yeah, it's a pretty high investment in to get a silver running back. I mean, I think that's certainly a statement that they want to have a balanced offense. But yeah, like you said, this team really thrived through the air. And they've got 3 big-name wide receivers right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if the plan is to early on really attack teams through the air and let that rookie running back just develop throughout the season. And then come playoff time, then you have this juggernaut of both on the ground and through the air that you have to deal with as an opposing defense.
All right, thanks for the report, Stephen, on Baltimore. Now did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I said sure.
Oh, okay, awesome. Well, let's go back south to another new team, the New Orleans Pharaohs, led by Aaron Arrington. Jack Brown has the preview. Take it away, Jack.
Now, of course, before we get to Aaron Arrington and his craziness with how high he's paid, first off, you got the number 1 overall pick on New Orleans here. You got Xander Gold. And he may as well just be a kid on Christmas Day with all the new toys he gets. As well, he is the highest paid QB, not at a gold level. Rather ironically. However, the analogy comes in more clear with the fact that he, much like Shabazz Synergy over in Dallas, has 4 targets to throw to. Now, of course, these are rather cheap Christmas toys, as he gets 3 wide receivers and a tight end in Brock Lee. Brock Lee, of course, being Copper and the lowest paid at the position. And 2 of those wide receivers are Mac Jackson, Leroy Brown, who I'm not related to in any way, shape, or form, also being at a Copper level. The only bronze wide receiver they have, of course, is Matt Wolf, and he is signed at a pretty decent rate right there. Now, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, well, New Orleans splurged a bit, some would say. They have 2 of the top 3 highest paid defensive players in the entire SFL, those being Aaron Arrington, the cornerback and owner of the team. He's the highest paid secondary player in the entire SFL. And of course, Keith McDaniel, the 3rd linebacker, 2nd highest paid linebacker behind, of course, Lynn Shady over in London. So they clearly have both a very important, they place a lot of importance in stopping the run and stopping the pass. I think that if Keith McDaniel and Aaron Arrington can really come alive throughout this season, you're going to see a New Orleans team that's going to be almost impossible to get past.
Wow. Man, that's a bold statement, Jack. Where do you see New Orleans finishing here in the South?
No, of course, that's a question that would have to be left into the season itself, but I could see them, again, it all comes down to if Keith McDaniel and Aaron Arrington can perform. If they don't perform, then you're going to be seeing them probably in 5th or 6th place. But if they perform well at a high capacity, then I could see them, probably coming in 3rd or even taking one of the top 2 spots.
Well, Jack, you've been on a defense over the years that is one of the best at putting players in positions to succeed, right, in a defensive scheme. And it's not as easy as it looks. And getting a linebacker and a corner to be players that you just do not want to be around it's a challenge. You think New Orleans is up for it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that they're going to be if they, again, it all depends on how they play their cards here. I think Aaron Arrington is definitely, he's definitely one of the more active owners in the league. So I think, the progression is going to really help him. Not that he'll need that much of it. He's already at the gold level. But, yeah, I think they're going to be able to do that if, again, they play their cards right. And if memory serves correctly, Aaron Arrington worked with Ramos for a little while. So, of course, let's not forget that Aaron here is also a part of that great defensive league.
All right, so that's a look at the New Orleans Pharaohs. And spoiler alert, New Orleans is going to start the preseason schedule coming up at the end of the show. We're going to break that down. That starts Sunday, July 1st, guys. That is next weekend. So exciting. Of course, it's generic playbooks, but you get to see guys like Xander Gold, the #1 pick in the rookie draft, on the field for the first time, and it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, from New Orleans, let's go to Las Vegas. And Jack, we don't technically like doing this, but it's the cards we were dealt with. Tanner having to run to work unexpectedly. But hey, give us a preview of the Las Vegas Fury. 3-3-3-3 across the board, the only team to do so.
Yeah, it seems to be that, you have a
Wait,
team like...
I'm sorry, Jack. I meant John. I'm sorry. John's got the notes.
I was excited to hear someone say what they thought about my team, but
okay, go ahead, Jack. We're running a little ahead of schedule. Go ahead, Jack.
You know what? I think we should do a super thing here. Where we have both of us kind of going into it. Anyways, oh God, I just said that. Yeah. So of course you gotta be looking at what position they're holding these players at, and of course, two of those three are going to be on the defensive side of the ball. In defensive tackle, Mike Johnson, Fats Johnson, now coming over to Las Vegas. And, of course, you also have Levant Irvine, who I'm going to be eventually a great guy. But, of course, their biggest signing, and, of course, the highest paid player on the team, Robert Redford, who he was a man who everyone kind of knew was going to go to Las Vegas, but they didn't know he would come in at such a high value. I mean, good Lord. I think that's 114, if I'm not mistaken. So he's definitely going to be a big force out in the West, which has always been kind of, you get a bunch of teams that have always kind of known for having pretty good running game. I'm looking at you, Mexico City.
All right, John, what was the thought process here behind Las Vegas's build? And obviously Robert Redford is a talent. He better be getting 170 yards a game at least through the first 6 weeks of the season, or you're wasting money.
Oh, I definitely agree, Cam. I think he's ready though. He's always in the locker room. He's ready to get on the field. I think he's doing sprints every day or something. He's staying active. But I really kept a defensive mind. That's what I liked when I came from the Sharks. So I really tried to keep that same idea when I came over with my own team and tried to put the team together. I think we'll have just as good defense as we had in the last season with the Sharks. But then I was interested to try the running back. Now, that's the only weakness that I see, is that as an owner, I didn't get to play with the running back at all that as much last season. But I think this guy can just power it through whatever play when he gets the ball. He's not going to get stopped very often. As far as everything else, I think you're still going to see some passing just because of the league rules. And maybe I think those wide receivers were surprised a lot of people. So I think balance-wise, I'm even surprised that it worked out so well. I put a lot of effort, a lot of time, and to make sure everything goes smoothly. And then the punter, no one took a punter except for us. But I know San Antonio did well with a punter, and I was saying, hey, we had a punter with the Sharks. Once again, I took what I knew, and there was a punter on the team because I think field position with a good defense is really good.
Yeah, so you're the only team with a kicker and a punter. Did you do it because of the successes with the actual special teams in San Antonio and San Francisco, or was it more about saving up cap space for big contracts like Redford and Thomas Rahman?
I think you could say both. I wasn't afraid to go that route because I knew it was good, and then it also allowed me to have that big cap space as one of the only teams to really use that expansion draft value and sign some really let those guys have a chance to really shine this season.
All right, now let's whip around the league, and we start with Atlanta. And hey, breaking news here, folks. Atlanta has a new logo tonight to unveil, and Jack Brown will break down the Atlanta Swarm. Take it away, Jack.
Of course, and first off, let's take a look at that logo real quick. It's very reminiscent to me of like the old Charlotte Hornets logo, and even when they moved to New Orleans. Very reminiscent. Good job, Atlanta. I'm really liking that logo. Anyways, now going over to the team itself. Now, each conference, from when I was doing my research, has one team that did not sign any gold. In the South, that team is the Atlanta Swarm. The Swarm's highest overall paid players, of course, BDG Hollywood, who, of course, was smacked right into that Pro Bowl, unlike yours truly. But yeah, and of course, one of the main headlines, of course, Atlanta has 5 different offensive players, if I remember so correctly, that are at least silver level, 3 of them being the wide receivers. So definitely Atlanta, I'm thinking, is going to try and do that sort of start slow, but then let the progression really kick in. But for that, they got to be really relying on their players to be active in the chats. But I don't think that's going to be that big of a problem for the Atlanta Swarm.
Shout outs to I want to get the shout out on the air. It is Derek Sharp Jr. of Curtain Jerker Design. So excellent job on Atlanta, and more information about team brandings coming up at the convention as we move forward into 2018 and 2019. And you touched on it, Jack, with the lack of golds and a lot of silvers. That 3 silver wide receiver set, how absolutely lethal can this Atlanta passing attack be, considering that that's where they struggled in Season 10?
Yeah, they could be lethal. And again, we throw back all the way back to what we were talking about with Tallahassee, where they're not very strong in terms of secondary. If they can really get past some of those really tough secondaries like Dallas and New Orleans, and I think they got a really good chance to really light up the South with a passing attack. And again, they also have a very decent running attack too. BDG Hollywood is signed at a silver level as well. So overall, their offense is very well rounded. Despite the fact they don't have anybody signed at gold, it is a very well rounded offense overall.
All right, so that's a look at the Atlanta Swarm. And now let's talk about Chicago with Steven.
Yeah, the Windy City. A little bit of a puzzler for me, Cam. This is a team that made it all the way to the championship game in Season 9, their very first season in the league. And then, puzzlingly, they go 3-9 last year. They had the best passing defense in the SFL in Season 10, but everything else was just mediocre. So what did Chicago do this offseason? They did not overreact. That's something has to be said about keeping the team build that you had the previous season and building a playbook for that particular build and for more than just one season. That's what Shane Warner has done here. Basically, no positional changes from last season. And as far as how he spread the wealth, as far as the silvers and bronzes, not a single gold star on the roster. Instead, opting to use those monies to spread the wealth and have as many as 5 bronze positional players and 3 silvers, 3 coppers. So, I think the future of the Wildcats is really about how much they can develop their playbook this off season and really take advantage of the team build that they've had and they will have for 2 straight seasons.
Chicago obviously had a rough season last year. They've got a lot of guys that have the potential to be great gold and silver players, as they've got a lot of contracts kind of in that mid-level. A lot of returners: Barnes, Hamrack, Hendershot, Gilbert, Varner, Kim, King, Spurgeon, Zeli. I mean, despite this team, having as rough of a year as they did, they kept the band together. So what has to turn around, Steven, in your mind? What's the key for Chicago to make another run?
Well, they've got to figure out a playbook that works for them, and it has to be. It's really, the onus is on the playbook early, because they're going to be behind some other teams as far as player progression is concerned, just because they're not fielding any golds at all. Now, it could be, after week 1, suddenly maybe a couple of those silvers, one of those silvers turns gold. But I think what we're looking at here is we're going to look at a team that may struggle early because of the talent they're facing on the opposite side of the field, but then will come on mid-season and late as that player progression starts to bump up each one of their players. So really, the onus is on the coaching staff for me, especially early, to make it work with the players that they have.
Progression is key all across the league. Thanks, Steven. Now back out west. John Bond as a preview of Mexico City.
Right. I think when you think of Mexico City, you think of two names. You think of Ray Bentley and you think of Matt Wilson. But now you've got to think of the family Dags and the fact that Mexico City brought 5 DBs total, similar to what the Indy Red Devils like to do, and it's stacked up on that defense. And if you got to realize that Ramos not only knows how to have Ray Bentley run the ball and have Bronze Bomber throw the ball to make winning games, you got to realize I think he's also got a good defensive mind and putting people where they need to be to catch the ball. You've got 2 linebackers, you've got a full defensive pack. I think that's where Mexico City is really going to shine and try to get that trophy back home this season.
No coppers. How'd they manage that?
They just signed all silver and bronze, and they only got the one free safety who looks like he's going to return the ball as a return specialist. So I think they just got the calculator out and really planned ahead, because they didn't even if you think about the rookie draft, they had everything already lined up before then.
Couple of star corners at the silver level. Corner, if Rastelli was still here, he might shed some light, but corner seems to be, I want to get Steven's thought on it, the biggest enigma across the league. Some teams think they're super important, some teams just don't care. What has the up and down opinion on corners been, Steven, and can you put a finger on it?
Yeah, obviously I can't, because last season I started with no star cornerbacks, and learned my lesson the hard way and actually had to recruit some mid-season. So I went from no cornerbacks to 2-star cornerbacks, and this year we've invested more than I can remember in the past ever investing in quarterbacks. So it's all about that scheme fit, man. Let me tell you, that scheme fit is everything. If you have the right scheme, we've seen it in the league, if you have the right scheme, you can run with non-stars and have great success with non-star cornerbacks. I just couldn't figure out what that was. And I think that's the bugaboo for a lot of teams, is it's not necessarily that we think we undervalue corners. It isn't that. It's that we're placing value in them because we don't know exactly how to scheme them right.
Hey, shout-outs to AJ Levy, Panda Boy, Bulldog Lover, CAG NFL, Colin Northrup, I'm a effing problem, and many others in the chat room here. Tonight, on a beautiful night as we count down to the SFL season, the Houston Hyenas are up next. Take it away, Jack.
So, of course, when it comes to a team like Houston, they only have one goal. And, of course, that goal is actually coming in at the tight end position at Justine Clifton. And he's, of course, one of only 3 gold tight ends in the entire SFL. They're also coming in with a silver halfback in Warren Murray. He's, of course, making his grand return. So what do you look at that, and what I personally see is that they're definitely going to try and get some sort of rushing attack going if, of course, they use Justine Clifton as more of a blocking tight end. So I think that would be definitely something more they were making sure of. Of course, along with the defensive side of the ball, the Hyenas are one of only 2 teams to go with no bronze or higher linebacker. And, of course, right there you have... and then, of course, they have their linebacker. He's a copper level, so that's a very low value to assign to a linebacker. And, of course, just looking back at them overall, they're definitely going to be more of a run-based team, probably with more of a secondary-oriented defense.
You're seeing Clifton, the only gold at tight end. Tight ends are tough to get involved too. When you can really get them involved well, and we've seen it with Tiberius Bovine and even Clifton in Alaska, man, it's almost impossible to stop. Houston not known for their tight end play. Jack, are you surprised at the heavy investment? Of course, you know, if you've seen Clifton falls in your lap, they may have just felt compelled to scoop him up.
Yeah, I think that's probably more what happened there, Cam. You know, you get a player like Yassine Clifton, who has just been an absolute stunner over the years, the Alaska Storm, and he comes knocking to your door saying, "Hey, I want to play on your team." I think at that point you just kind of have to give him a gold contract, and maybe it'll bolster a nice blocking attack. Get a good running game established, because you can't get a running game going if you don't have anybody blocking. Of course, he could also be lethal out in the passing, so it's going to be interesting. Again, as you said, Houston not known for their tight end play. It's going to be very interesting to see how the tight end is used by the Houston Hyenas.
Good analysis there, Jack. Steven has Indianapolis's future outlook.
Yeah, Indianapolis is a team that it was better than their 6-6 record last season. Look, this is a team in their first season in the SFL had the 4th scoring offense and the 4th scoring defense. This team in this conference should dominate this upcoming season. And look, they have made the investment this year in defensive linemen. They've added a defensive tackle and a defensive end, so they've jumped on that defensive line bandwagon. But the changes that they made from their last season's roster was only losing a tight end and a punter. So they have proven to be equally balanced on both sides of the ball. And now you throw in star defensive linemen. This team could absolutely be near the top of the standings early and maintain that. Now, other teams are underinvesting in their free safety. Indy signed a goal. And I am a personal fan of that free safety spot. I think it makes a world of difference on their defense, especially in the secondary, obviously. But they weren't done. They also added a copper free safety. So it gives you an idea of some of the coverages they're going to be running. But, again, for me, this is an Indy scoring offense that ranks 4th, despite ranking 8th in passing and 15th in running offense, which means that Indy made the most of their scoring opportunities. With this all-silver offense that should quickly be player progressed into gold by midseason, I can see them running rampart through the league.
Indy's offensive issue was at the running back position. They, instead of like London, who threw it out, Indy's saying, "Hey, I think we're going to need it." How much dangerous do you believe that this Indy offense can be with a good running game, considering the type of play that Daly and McCormick showed for much of last season?
Yeah, I think they proved that they don't need much more from the running back position. They needed a little bit more, but their bread and butter was, their passing offense, whether that was Nathan Lee last year or their new quarterback under center. The scheme and the playbook for me shows, and they prove that they can be effective in the passing game, right up there with some of the best in the league. If they can get just a little bit more out of their running back, that's all that they need. They just need an effective running back who can get those hard 3rd and 1 games, those goal line games, those kind of things, because the just passing attack is one of the best in the league.
Preseason schedule will drop in 8 minutes. Hey, John, how does San Francisco look?
I think you'll see that San Francisco is also defensive heavy. They've got one of 3 gold wide receivers in the league, and that's Gabriel Manning, and he's the only gold wide receiver in the conference. So you should see the pass offense like you did last season, I suspect. But then you've also got, Ugunzulu, I believe, and you got a guy that was ready to run last season that at the last moment they went fullback, and now I think they're ready to start running that ball too. So you can't discount the fact that they've got a silver at running back. Now what is interesting is they've got a lot of copper safeties or defensive backs. So will that Is that all they need to, as we said before, what position's important? You've still got a great cornerback, but then the rest of the defensive back, is that going to hurt them when they're trying to stop Alaska and some of the other pass-heavy teams, or people just trying to pass in general?
You know, similar to Vegas having that high-value running back that they need production out of quickly and early, they need production out of Ahmad Chima and Gabriel Manning. That has to be a 1-2 punch, or you got to believe that San Francisco is going to be losing a lot of shootouts.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think they've got a plan. I think they've got a plan. They learned from last season. They had to do a lot of learning throughout it. I talked to them a lot before I left the organization, and I'm happy to see them do well this season.
All right, from San Francisco out to Tulsa, Jack has the preview of last season's darlings of the postseason.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, Tulsa last season, you know, they obviously had a very big start off, but of course they come in now with one of only 3 bronze halfbacks in the entire league in Sanzo Robinson, showing that they would rather see that position grow, as it was their strong suit last year. But of course, probably one of their biggest signings overall was Charles Ball coming back again at that strong safety position. And I wouldn't be surprised as that is, because he signed at 73.26, the 3rd highest of any player at the strong safety position. And of course, he's also the team's only gold contract. So clearly, they're looking to keep up that secondary strength they had last season. And again, why wouldn't they? Charles Ball is an absolute beast back out there getting interceptions. It seems like every single, well, it seems almost every single pass was getting picked off by Charles Ball. Of course, they were acquiring loose gun Kanye Rockefeller as a silver free safety. So again, they're really focusing on that deep secondary, you know, because, well, when all else fails, those are going to be the guys who stop the touchdown from happening. Or, of course, you know, if someone's going to go with a deep ball, which, you know, is always a fun little popular thing to do here in the SFL, you know, they're going to be able to stop it or even pick it off. So expect another strong secondary year from the Tulsa Desperados.
Stephen Bush leaves Oklahoma City to go to Tulsa. Ouch. Let's stay in Oklahoma. The Renegades, and Jack, Renegades made the playoffs for the first time in many, many years. Are they going to make it back there this year? What's their build look like?
Well, you know, I always like to think about it as going back into, you know, the old NCAA games where you just had like the generic sort of kind of team builds, you know, where you had like just West Coast, that sort of thing. I always like to think of them as, when I was researching them, they look to be slightly run-leaning. However, they do have at least some sort of passing attack in there. Because, well, for one, they're captained by QB Deacon Nickens, coming back for a 2nd season with the Renegades at a gold level. Of course, they also have a gold linebacker in Day Drury, clearly looking for a run-stopping sort of defense right there. And, well, OKC always has had the reputation of being the old men of the SFL. Well, not quite anymore. They now have the silver halfback and the feisty rookie J.W. Doyle, who signed at, I think if my memory serves correctly, a 93 value. So going absolutely berserk there. And 2 silver wide receivers in Deezer Powell and Hunter Jones. And of course, another intriguing fact about them is the fact that they are running with 2 tight ends. Bronze tight end Tiberius Bovine and copper tight end Charles Windham. So the run is going to be important to OKC. Again, if you're going to be running a 2 tight end system, you know, tight ends aren't going to be running after the pass every single play. So you're going to be wanting a good blocking brigade in order to help J.W. Doyle gain some big yards. Of course, for defense, they not only have Day Drury as a gold-lined linebacker, they also have 2 silver safeties. And just overall, they also have a copper D defensive end and 2 copper cornerback. So primary focus on D for them looks to be stopping the run, but some pass protection is thrown in, although it definitely does not seem to be their primary focus.
The Deacon Nickens to Deezer Powell connection was one of the more fun quarterback wide receiver duos to watch last season. Last but not least, Steven has the preview of the 4-time champs, the Queen City Corsairs. What is Queen City doing this year, Stephen?
Yeah, it's just rinse and repeat. You know, they were 7-5 last year. A little bit of a disappointing season for Queen City as far as the standings is concerned, but I think, you know, this is a 4-time champs, like you mentioned. You just can't count them out. And they had the third highest scoring offense last year, and that's mainly due because of their running game, which ranked second in the SFL, 12th in passing offense. In order to counter that, basically, Eric Barkley has exchanged a tight end from last season for a wide receiver. So they're going to be running with 3 wide receivers. Just imagine that, Camp. They have that dominating running game that they have, and now you can spread it out with 3 wide receivers whenever you want to attack, opposing secondaries in the air. And just how do you cover that as an SFL defensive coordinator? It's going to give them nightmares. As far as their defense, they de-invested in their defensive line a little bit, taking away one of their defensive ends and also a linebacker out of last year's lineup, and adding 2 star cornerbacks. This is something that we haven't seen from Queen City in a little while. They usually run with no star corners, and now you give this same defense that ranked 9th. They were a top 10 defense that ranked 9th last season, and now you put 2 star corners on that defense. How much will they improve? So, please
go ahead.
No. The only other thing I was going to mention is that they don't have any silver stars on this team. They've invested heavily in their gold quarterback and running back. Obviously, those are the primary positions they wanted to invest in. They've found so much success in doing so. And then for me, being in this conference, you know, having Queen City in this conference, the 4-time champions, it's like feeding chum to a great white. Like, there's no reason Queen City can't dominate the East in season 11.
You know, A.J. Caswell was rumored to be retiring, and they clearly think the world of these 2 unquestioned leaders of this ball club, and they've surrounded them with basically, you know, a lot of good pieces in Sicario and King and Curtis. They more than any other team is giving the keys to a couple of guys and saying, hey, this is your squad.
Yeah, and why not? I mean, these are 2 crafty veterans. These are guys that are proven stars in this league, and they have won. They have won with this team and with this formula. No need to really change it. Just tinker it. No need to change it because you got those 4 rings. Why not add a 5th one?
All right, that's a look at all 21 teams, all 3 conferences. It's now time to unveil the preseason schedule on the SFL Network on YouTube all week long from July 1st to July 7th. It all kicks off with the New Orleans Pharaohs at the Alaska Storm, Sunday, July 1st at 4 p.m. Central. The defending champs, the #1 pick in the rookie draft, and a brand new team. There's no better way to open the preseason. Your favorite commentary crews like me and Steven, Ramos Curtis, Colin and Rick, Matt and Mike, and golly, just the list goes on and on. Andy and Shan will all be back in week 1, but we're gonna get to hear some new analysts. We're gonna get to hear some old faces as well, and try to start pairing some more broadcast crews up to get a little more consistency there. So we're going to be hearing all of that through this preseason as Mike Daggs, the director of broadcasting, doing a fantastic job getting it all set up. At 6 o'clock Central on Sunday, Tulsa's at Las Vegas. Eric Vincent and Brock Willis have that call. Monday, it's 1 game, Dallas at Carolina at 6. Michael Turillo and Mark Lopez are going to be broadcasting that one. Tuesday, it's a doubleheader. First in the afternoon at 2 o'clock. Denver's at London. Alvin Washington and Tanner Hendrix on the call. Indianapolis heads to Mexico City in primetime. Damon Simeon and Marcus Dunhill will be on the broadcast. Wednesday, July 4th. It's a 4th of July special, 6 p.m. Central. Tallahassee's at Queen City before you go out for fireworks and fun. Damon Simeon and Mark Lopez will be calling that game between 2 rivals who are not on the schedule this year. Thursday the 5th, the doubleheader, Baltimore at Atlanta at 2 o'clock. Eric Vincent and Tanner Hendrix. OKC at San Francisco. Michael Turillo and Merrick Atera are on the call. Friday, July 6th, Houston's at Chicago. Eric Vincent and Marcus Dunhill are there. And then Saturday, July 7th, the doubleheader. London at Vancouver. Sioux Falls at St. Louis. Alvin Washington, Brock Willis, Michael Turillo, Levant Mercer there with you. You might have noticed that London's on there twice. We have 21 teams. We have an odd number. London volunteered to have a second game, and of course it's all generic playbooks, so nobody's gaining too particular of an advantage, but London will head all the way to Canada, and they will host one of the league's newest leaders in the Denver Nightwings. Alvin Washington and Merrick Itera have the call on opening night from Anchorage, New Orleans, Alaska, Sunday, July 1st, preseason kickoff here on the SFL Network on YouTube. I'll start with John and his thoughts on the preseason slate.
I'm excited to see teams that won't get to see each other during the regular season get a chance to kind of just throw the ball around, get a feel, get out there on the field. People are excited to watch the games. They're excited to hear broadcasters call out their names. So I think all those games look interesting to me. I'm going to watch every single one of them.
All right, Jack, what stands out to you in preseason? Of course, it's generic playbooks, but man, it's just fun seeing all these guys hit them. A lot of people for the first time, and just to see these teams back in action.
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's been a while without some SFL football. Sure, you've been having
too long.
Yeah, like sure you've been having the SFL throwbacks, and Mighty's been putting on. Thanks a lot on that, there, buddy. Of course, you've been having a couple scrimmages throughout. I remember Alaska and London, if I'm not mistaken, had a scrimmage not too long ago. But of course, now London is going all over the place. They're heading to Vancouver, which I think is the greatest distance between two SFL teams. And of course, they host the Denver Nightwings. They're definitely going to be a fun little team to watch in their two preseason clashes. But of course, that opener, New Orleans at Alaska, that is definitely a game that I'm going to make sure I'm going to book it on my calendar to watch on July 1st.
All right, Steven, preseason, you know, it's the time of the year where everybody takes, they don't take a grain of salt. They just dump the whole salt shaker out and go into panic mode or celebration mode or all sorts of stuff. And we've also seen some dramatic endings and crazy plays in the preseason as well. What do you take away from the preseason if you're a new player and if you're a team that has high hopes for season 11?
Yeah, absolutely nothing. Take nothing from it except for the hype for the regular season. I mean, look, the hype is real for teams that, well, for everyone that has been longing to see the SFL back on a regular basis. Obviously, you take what you can get. And for these teams that are new, these expansion teams, teams returning, Baltimore, Denver, I mean, you guys have really never seen your team on the field before. This is an exciting time. So absolutely be hyped for that. As far as performance, don't even pay attention to the score. And I was thinking about this, Cam. You know, some of the teams that I really kind of want to see are the ones that are unconventional, the ones that have really toyed with their team build and maybe even lopsided to one side of it, maybe not investing in a running back. Maybe they have 4 wide receivers, you know, but this generic playbook is not going to bode well for those teams. This is a playbook that really honestly wants to run the ball. So if you like, you know, smash mouth football and your team is built that way, I think these generic playbooks actually lean towards you. But at the end of the day, the real takeaway is that, don't be disappointed if your team gets blown out or if you don't get the ball the way you thought you should. These generic playbooks are just that. They are totally generic, and they are not the playbooks that we as owners and coaches pound out during the offseason to try and get you guys the ball and to utilize what we do best. That's what, that for these team builds, that's just it's just going to be generic. So just keep that in mind. Yes, be excited, but throw up the score.
Hey, Steven, let's circle back. This is the St. Louis Gladiators in our Eastern Conference slate. Let's take a look at St. Louis while we have a few minutes before we head off the air. And the Gladiators build, which features 8 players at gold or silver level.
Yeah, wow. I'm sorry, man. That is a big oversight. Let me make up.
We got it though. At least we had it.
Look, this is one of only 2 teams with 3 golds on offense. London being the other. Gold, silver on the defensive line. Only 1-star wide receiver, a silver. But the other 3 offensive skill players are gold. This is a team that struggled in scoring offense last season, tied for 15th in scoring offense, had the 15th worst passing offense, 8th running offense. This is a team that wants to score, and wants to improve their offense. Obviously, wants to score. They've invested so much early here in their skill players, quarterback, running back, tight end, all golds. I think they will. I think at least initially, when the season starts, we're going to see a nice offensive explosion from the St. Louis Gladiators, and then in turn, this is a team that has a defensive line that now bolsters a gold defensive end and a silver defensive tackle and another silver defensive end. So they're not going, necessarily all in like some of the other teams on the defensive line, but certainly the star power is there to have a major effect. They do only have one star cornerback as a bronze. That's a bit concerning because the change from last season's roster, they actually lost a wide receiver, lost a cornerback, and in their place added that extra defensive end and a kicker. So are they able, like many other teams, able to figure out that cornerback quandary and be able to get it done with one star, one bronze, actually, cornerback?
And that's a wrap. Shout-outs to John Bond for stepping in at a moment's notice. John, incredible job, my friend. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm glad you had me. I was trying to impart some insight and knowledge, and I'm always willing to try to talk about the SFL.
Jack, as always, thanks for being here. And the SFL podcast is going to have a new look. There's going to be a new survey going out there to everyone as the podcast is looking for help on how to improve its viewership and its show. We're moving to a new night. Is that right, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, assuming everything, goes as we think it will go, it'll be on Thursdays now. It'll be its own, little standalone thing. But, of course, that's not exactly set in stone. Of course, we're going to be sending out that survey in the next couple days. Even if you didn't listen to the SFL podcast during the season, I and the SFL podcast crew highly would love for you to take that survey just so that we know what you want. We want the SFL podcast to be the best thing for the community, what the community wants most. So definitely take that survey once that gets put out.
Stephen, we're going to be shaking off the rust on opening night at the SFL convention after the Hall of Fame ceremony, Alaska, Mexico City. That is July 13th, so less than a month away now. Are you ready? Are you fired up? The roster reveal show is basically like the end of the offseason. Let's get this going. Yeah,
it's can't get here quick enough, and the excitement for that first night of that SFL convention to meet these guys that many of us have not even seen in person, and that we've only spoken to either through DMs or maybe Skype, to be there that first night, to meet them, to honor the Hall of Famers, guys that are legends in our league, and then to kick off the night with doing game commentary with you. It's just going to be, I can't wait. It's going to be a dream.
For Mike Daggs, the director of broadcasting here at the SFL Network, John Bond, owner of the Las Vegas Fury, Jack Brown, linebacker, Mexico City, Stephen Milinex, owner of the Dallas Lobos, I am SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine. Thank you all for being here tonight for the roster reveal show, and we'll see you on YouTube for preseason action starting Sunday, July 1st at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. Good night, everybody.